It is the story that haunts our collective memory, a global deluge, an ocean of divine judgment swallowing an entire world lost to wickedness. Rain falling for 40 days and 40 nights until every mountain peak was submerged and every living thing that breathed on dry land was gone. All except for 8 souls and a cargo of life preserved in a vessel of impossible scale. A ship built not by a mariner, but by a patriarch, not for a voyage, but for survival. This is the story of Noah's Ark. For millennia, it has been the ultimate quest for biblical archaeology, a story of faith, a symbol of hope, and, perhaps, a physical, historical reality. The Genesis account describes this vessel not as a myth, but as an artifact resting on the mountains of Ararat. But after centuries of searching, after countless expeditions, hoaxes, and tantalizing clues, what have we really found? Today, we are reopening the investigation. Using modern technology, declassified intelligence, and geological science, we are re-examining the most compelling and controversial evidence ever gathered. We will analyze the Ararat Anomaly, a mysterious object captured by spy planes that matches the Ark's dimensions. We will investigate the Durupınar site, a massive formation that many believe is the fossilized hull of the ship itself. Has the physical remnant of the greatest event in human history been hiding in plain sight? Or is the search for Noah's Ark the most profound case of wishful thinking the world has ever known? The journey is dangerous. The evidence is complex, and the truth may force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the dawn of our world. This is the Ararat Anomaly, why scientists are rethinking the Noah's Ark mystery. The story begins in Genesis, chapter 6. The text is not vague. It is not a parable about a small boat. It is a precise technical blueprint for a colossus. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. The instructions are specific. The wood, gopher, a material so ancient its exact identity is now lost to history. The sealant, pitch, or bitumen, a natural waterproofing agent well known to ancient Mesopotamians. But it is the scale that truly defies imagination. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth, 50 cubits, and its height, 30 cubits. What is a cubit? The standard ancient measurement, the length from an average man's elbow to the tip of his middle finger. Using the conservative Hebrew cubit of 18 inches, the ark was 450 feet long. Using the longer Royal Egyptian cubit of 20.4 inches, it stretches to 510 feet. Let's put that in perspective. The Titanic was 882 feet long, but the ark's dimensions, 510 feet long, 85 feet wide, 51 feet high, create a displacement tonnage that rivals early 20th century ocean liners. This was not a boat. It was a barge, a massive floating box designed not to sail, but to survive. Its proportions, a 6-to-1 length-to-breadth ratio, are, according to modern naval architects, the perfect golden ratio for stability in rough seas. A vessel with this design is virtually impossible to capsize. It would orient itself perpendicular to the waves, riding out the storm. It was to have 3 decks, a roof, and a zohar, a word so obscure scholars debate if it means window or a light source. The theological stakes were absolute. This wasn't just a flood, it was a decreation, a return of the primordial waters of the deep mentioned in Genesis 1. The ark was to be a new Eden, a floating sanctuary, a biological hard drive preserving the seed of all life after its kind. After 150 days, the text tells us the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Not mountain, mountains, plural. This is the region, not the specific peak. The ancient kingdom of Urartu, a vast volcanic highlands in what is now modern-day eastern Turkey, near the borders of Armenia and Iran. And at its heart is the mountain we call Ararat. It is a massive, dormant stratovolcano, 2 peaks, Greater Ararat, rising to nearly 17,000 feet, and Lesser Ararat. It is a place of savage beauty and extreme danger. The upper reaches are covered by a permanent 17-square-mile ice cap. The weather is unpredictable and violent. But the greatest danger is not the mountain. It is the politics. For decades, this region has been a hotbed of geopolitical conflict. The PKK, the Kurdish separatist group, has used these mountains as a base. The Turkish government has for long periods designated it a restricted military zone. Any expedition to Ararat requires more than just climbing permits. It requires navigating a minefield of government bureaucracy, military suspicion, and the very real risk of armed conflict. This is the Forbidden Mountain, a place that has guarded its secrets with ice, weather, and warfare. And yet, they have come. For centuries. The quest is almost as old as the story itself. The first-century Jewish historian Josephus wrote that the remains of the ark were still visible in his day, and that pilgrims would take pieces of the bitumen as amulets. The medieval traveler Marco Polo, while not claiming to see it, noted that the ark was said to be on the mountain, but it was inaccessible. The modern era of the quest begins in 1829 with Dr. Friedrich Parrott, the first man to officially reach the summit of Ararat. He found no ark, but his report ignited a wave of interest. In 1876, a British statesman and scholar, James Bryce, climbed the mountain. He reported finding a large piece of hand-tooled wood at over 13,000 feet, in a place where no tree could possibly grow. It was clearly, he wrote, part of some large structure. He believed it was a remnant. The stories became wilder. Reports of a mysterious dark ship seen by Russian aviators during World War I. Tales from local Kurdish villagers of a ship on the mountain that their ancestors had always known. But the first piece of so-called hard evidence came in 1955. A French industrialist and amateur explorer, Fernand Navarra claimed to have climbed into a crevasse in the Ararat Glacier and found, frozen deep in the ice, the timbers of a massive structure. He chiseled out a piece of hand-tooled dark wood. The world was electrified. This was not a story. It was a sample. The wood was sent for analysis, and here the story becomes complicated. Initial carbon-14 dating tests were conducted. The results were devastating for Navarra. They placed the wood's age at roughly 1,400 to 1,500 years old, medieval, not ancient. Navarra's critics, including former expedition partners, claimed he had perpetrated a hoax. They alleged he had purchased an old piece of wood in a nearby village and planted it on the mountain. But Navarra's supporters fired back. They argued the wood, saturated for millennia in glacial water, was contaminated, rendering C14 dating useless. They pointed to other less publicized tests, one by a Spanish forestry institute that suggested a much greater age, perhaps 5,000 years. The Navarra sample, which should have been the smoking gun, became the first great controversy. A piece of wood, either the most sacred relic on earth or a simple fraud. The quest had hit a wall. The ice, the politics, and the ambiguous evidence seemed to have defeated the explorers. They had been looking on the ground. They had been climbing the mountain. They had been digging in the ice. They needed to look from a different perspective. They needed to look from the heavens.
The 1950s. The Cold War is at its height. The United States is flying high-altitude U-2 spy planes over the Soviet Union. Their primary target, Soviet missile bases. Mount Ararat sits at a strategically vital position,